Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Amishi, for that really generous introduction. My name is Mansi Choksi, and I am the author of The Newlyweds. It's a work of narrative nonfiction. Essentially, this is a book about three Indian couples from different parts of the country. Each of their stories is meant to say something about how India is changing. So I carefully selected each of these couples, I think, to illustrate a force that is shaping modern India. I'll talk about the couples shortly, but I wanted to tell you a bit about why I wanted to write this book in the first place. We're a remarkably young country. 2 in every 3 Indians is under the age of 35. And we're the first generation of young Indians that grew up with, post-liberalization, after the advent of social media. And in many ways, our growing up looks very different from our parents growing up. As we were growing up, we were watching MTV. We were able to see how young people elsewhere in the world live. And our ideas, I think, of the world and our place in the world were vastly different from our parents and our grandparents' generation. We're a really young country, but in many ways, we're exactly like our parents, and especially when it comes to things like love and marriage. We make choices that are kind of based on our parents' expectation and our family's expectations. And that's because marriage as an institution has such a important place in Indian culture. We are a society that places greater emphasis on collectivism than individualism. Like in the West, it's a very individualistic society. Choices are private, choices are personal. And in India, our sense of identity, I think, comes from the various groups that we belong to. Our daily lives and our politics are arranged around which groups we belong to. And marriage as an institution is a tool that helps cement those power hierarchies in a way. If I think the reason there is a big sort of taboo around choosing our own partners is because marriage is a way to make power hierarchies stronger. And if young people started to choose who they wanted to marry, it would kind of disturb the very peaceful equilibrium of how Indian society thrives. So this is why I wanted to write a book about society and how it's changing through the lens of love, but not just how I didn't want to only write about how young love forms and falls apart, but really say something about what happens when love is gained and then it starts to feel unheroic once you have it, and then I wanted to. I'm a kid who grew up with watching Hindi serials and Hindi movies, and I think a lot of young people in here have ideas about love and marriage that are derived from pop culture, and I wanted to see the effect of how we choose our partners after consuming this kind of pop culture, and what happens in the aftermath. When we watch our movies, they end at a high, but what really happens when the dramatic sort of effect of the love story fades away. So large parts of this book actually linger in the aftermath of the love story. So there's, most of this book actually is in the mundane, everyday moments of these young couples kind of reckoning with their choices. I started reporting this book in 2016, and it grew out of a magazine story I did for Harper's. I stopped reporting when the book was published, like a year before the book was published. So it was a very long process. And in that time, these young people, grew up. Their ideas about themselves changed. Their ideas, their loyalties and affection shifted. Their ideas about their own place in the world changed a lot. And I think I thought a lot about perspective, whose point of view I should write this book from. And especially, I'm a person who's had journalism training. So we have this tendency to go in and report things objectively. And I'm, with this kind of like long-term project, I think there is nothing like objectivity because the lens through which you view an event changes constantly. And I made a choice when I was writing the story that I was going to shift points of view to kind of choose points of view as I went about writing, choose which characters' points of view. And I think that I did that because I wanted to understand, and I think it's just more complex, and it is able to create a sort of a more sophisticated connection with the reader that goes beyond pity, or that goes beyond. I think when a reader starts to see the sort of internal calculations that a character makes, I just felt that that would be a more bloodied connection. So I want to introduce you guys to the couples that I met. This is Neetu and Devinder. I met them at the Love Commandos shelter. The Love Commandos is a vigilante group in New Delhi that promises to protect young people that are marked for honor killings by their families. Neetu and Devinder grew up in a village in Haryana, and were very painfully aware of the stakes of marrying outside of their caste or within the same gotra. They grew up not far from Manoj and Bubbly. You might have heard about it in 2012. A Supreme Court ruling kind of, for the first time, convicted a CAP leader for abetting the murder of this young couple that had married within the gotra. Neetu and Devinder are this young couple that kind of have been childhood sweethearts. They realize that they're not going to be able to win their parents' approval. Neetu drugs her parents with sleeping pills, and they run off to the Love Commando shelter in Delhi, where I met them. And the first time I saw them, I instantly fell in love with Neetu because she was just such. And to me, she like summed up this slice of rural, semi-urban India that I felt like we don't have like enough great literature about. She kept a diary of all the important things that happened in her life. She talked about how she packed everything that she owned into 4 suitcases and eloped. When we think about elopement, you think about like there's a lightness to it. You just take your most important belongings and run off. But Neetu, on the other hand, had carefully curated these 4 large suitcases and left. And she just kind of saw herself and Devinder as leads in a movie that nobody was filming. One of the things she told me was that we're just like Shahid Kapoor and Kareena Kapoor in Jab We Met, except we don't have nice clothes. And I thought it was such a beautiful way to kind of witness how much we're affected and how much our perspectives are shaped by pop culture. And that's actually what drew me to them in the first place. And I kept in touch with them over several years. And if you read the book, you'll see like they kind of grow up over the course of the book. Anyways, they are in the grip of the Love Commandos. And while they're away, Devinder's family gets attacked by Neetu's family, and of course, there's a big fallout with that. You can read about that in the book. So this was the first couple, and I chose them because I wanted to say something about, the place that millennia-old prejudices still have in our current society, and how young people navigate that. This is the second couple. This is Reshma and Preeti. They are actually cross cousins and from Telangana, from a village on the border of Telangana and Maharashtra. And cross cousins is not a taboo sort of arrangement where they come from. I chose them because this is a working class lesbian couple. When we hear about LGBT couples, there's a tendency to focus on like urban gay men, and I just felt like this was the more interesting story to write about. This couple that was essentially marginalized in several ways. Just the kind of courage it takes to be together in a place where they don't have the vocabulary for the relationship and the feelings that they feel. There is no access to a community of equal rights activists. They're essentially fighting this by themselves. And I wrote this. I chose them because this was a time at which Section 377 was being debated in the country, and there was it was being dismantled in the Supreme Court. But we had little to no understanding of how much this actually trickles down for a couple like Reshma and Preeti. They were just so isolated and disconnected from the movement, and they were just so alone in how they were navigating life. And what essentially ended up happening with them is that they struggled with their own ideas of what it meant to be in a respectable relationship. So, for instance, for Reshma, her closest point of reference was her own parents' marriage, which was a very problematic, abusive marriage. So she took on that role of being the sort of the man in their relationship, and then things kind of go south, and there are some acts of cruelty that she's later ashamed about. But I thought it was I chose their story because I wanted to say something about how laws are one thing, but the social life of sexuality is a completely different thing. This was Reshma and Preeti, and also this was a lot about perspective. I thought a lot about which section should be written from whose perspective. You know, should Reshma be the one to get the louder voice because she was the more vocal one? Should Preeti be the one to get more sections in the book because she was the more sort of, she had more complex thinking in a sense. So I thought a lot about how perspectives should change and whose point of view should I write from. And then, of course, I had to battle with my own ideas of, my own sort of filters of rights and wrongs as I was writing it. And it was a, sort of learning experience for me because I did a lot of the reporting in the 2016, 2017, and then I sat down to write in 2020. And when I would go back and listen to the tapes as I was writing, or when I would, I was still in touch with them throughout. But when I would try to fact check things or try to understand something, I'd often find that memories change, and something that they might have told me on tape 1 year might be something that they remember completely differently another year. I thought about how truth is a really fickle and fragile thing, and the sort of compass that I went by was to just think of the writing as their truth. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the sort of thumb rule that I applied. And this is Monica and Arif. Monica is a Hindu middle-class woman from Nagpur. Arif is the son of a tailor from a village called Basmath. They are, just an ordinary young couple that happen to be Hindu and Muslim, find themselves stuck with an unwanted pregnancy, and then, before they know it, are at the center of a love jihad controversy. They're being chased by the Bajrang Dal. They're essentially living the life of the hunted. They find themselves entangled in a political conspiracy that they know nothing about. I followed them over the course of 6 years as well. And when I first met them, they were young and naive. And by the end of it, they were bitter and jaded. And I wanted to read a section from Monica and Arif's story to tell you a bit about whose perspective I chose, and if that makes sense to you guys. And if you have, I wanted to just share, I'm going to read an excerpt from a chapter called Snakes and Mongooses. The first time Monica Ingley sat on the back of Mohammad Arif Dosani's motorbike one summer afternoon in 2015, he slammed on the front brakes to make her tumble toward him in the hope of sparking a romance. Arif, as he was called, was a villager from the drought belt in the western Indian state of Maharashtra. He was 23, with pockmarked cheeks, a circular nod, and a heart he kept ice cold while flirting with city girls. In the short distance to a suburban district with gorgeous views of the Kanha River, where the rest of their friends were waiting, Arif intentionally hit the brakes twice. Monica still sat straight as a pole, as if she were welded into the seat. She was 18, small and delicate, with luminous skin and a glossy side braid, and a perpetually stunned expression, her large eyes flicked on like headlights. At a traffic signal, when Arif turned around to give his passenger an impish smile, he scowled and told him to keep his eyes on the road. Sorry. For the rest of his years, whenever Arif entered one of his meditative moods, searching for the turning point of his life, he returned to this memory. In every telling, it took a different form. It was this moment that filled his world with colors. It was this moment that sentenced him to a life of destructive sorrow. I'm skipping a part to get to another change of perspective. So I decided to start with this is just a meet cute. It is where they first met each other, and I could have chosen to tell it from Monica's perspective, but I thought it would be more interesting to tell it from Arif's perspective because he came with a complex sort of personal history. This was a young man who thought of his Muslim identity as a sort of liability. He was a young man that moved to the city hoping to score a date with a city girl, within the just in that one small encounter, I think it sums up the entire history of growing up, in a place where you're so aware of your religious identity and are so aware of your status in this society that it kind of changes the way that you move around in the world. And then eventually he tries to ask her out, and she says that I can't because you're Muslim, and that's her explanation for it. I'm going to read another section. In present-day Nagpur, Golwalkar's ghost presided over every messy intricacy of daily life. When Arif passed through Reshambagh, the thriving Hindu neighborhood where Monica grew up, his body stiffened with the fear that someone would grab his collar and begin thrashing him. It was here, where housewives in puff-sleeved nighties haggled cheerfully at vegetable carts, that a Hindu-Muslim riot ignited by a sung procession had reaped its first harvest of lives half a century earlier. Since then, the same violence had visited again and again. It was there, 3 lanes over from Monica's house, that Golwalkar's last rites were performed in 1973. In that sprawling compound, an annual summer camp continued to prepare thousands for a Hindu reawakening. The Sangh's cadres stomped like soldiers, arranged in neat columns and trailing a marching band like a state cavalcade. Nagpur's map was blotches of saffron and green, with the city organized into Hindu and Muslim pockets, into Reshambags of Monica's and Hassanbags of Arif's. That evening, when Monica offered Arif his Muslim identity as an explanation for her rejection, the happy kingdom of delusions he had built for himself shattered like a dropped mirror. History is written, his history is witness that Hindus and Muslims cannot be together, Arif told his friend Khalid over the phone. If we are snakes, they are mongooses. 2 weeks later, when Arif's worldly pragmatism had dissolved into the despair of one-sided love, Monica accepted a platonic invitation to go see the Hindi movie Hamari Adhuri Kahani. The actor Imran Hashmi appeared on screen, accusing the woman he pursued of secretly loving him back, as Arif searched Monica's face in the darkness of the matinee show. You love me, but you won't say it, Hashmi's character said, and Arif cleared his throat to emphasize that this was a movie about their own lives. You want to fall into my embrace, you want to stay in my heart, but you won't allow it, the actor went on. That's when Arif saw Monica clench a smile. When they walked out from the movie theater into the sunblast of the street, the tense silence between them sounded like 2 held breaths. The movie's ending was tragic, with both Hashmi and his love interest dead, confirming the suspicion that forbidden love could find eternal embrace only in death. Look, I'm in this field for a long time, Arif said, referring to the field of romantic pursuit. He opened the conversation, asking her to date him, in the same way he began requests for pocket money, passing marks in school, a cigarette, or a transfer of mobile talk time. Please, yaar, I'll treat you like a queen, he said, his face crumpled like a discarded love letter. Only one chance, don't I deserve that much? Okay, he heard her say before he disappeared into Deshambagh. So for me, this was really important because our perspectives are also as much as they're a result of our personal histories and the, a result of our childhoods and the formative experiences of our life, I think as young Indians, they're also defined by pop culture. They're also defined by what we see on the screen and they're also defined by, when we think about love on the screen, love is seen as this great destabilizing force that can bridge these large divides of culture and caste, class, marriage, sexuality. But the movies end at a high. When that same love is reassigned into mundane tasks, into mundane day-to-day decisions, it starts to look a bit different. So this essentially is a book that deals also with the characters reckoning with their own sort of stripping down of perspectives that they've borrowed from pop culture, from their childhood, from their from their ideas of the world. So this was essentially the guiding light for me when I was writing. I thoroughly fact checked. I the characters got copies of the book. They were each of their stories were read back. Everything was transcribed, recorded, photographed, backed by court and documentary evidence. But still, when I sat down to write, I tried to write from the perspective of a person's truth in the moment of time that they were in when that particular event took place. I think that my time is up. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I wonder if you have any questions and you'd like me to answer them.